Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Finding Data Workshop. My name is Tess Greinock, and I'm a research data and scholarly communications librarian at the Lamar Suter Library. And all the slides that you're going to see today will be shared with the recording, so don't feel like you need to jot every link down. They will be provided for you. At the end of today's class, I hope you will be able to identify avenues for accessing data for research, describe challenges for finding and accessing data, and develop a plan for accessing data for research. And just to give you an overview of what we will be covering today, we're going to discuss how to create a research question for data reuse, challenges for finding and accessing data, places to find data, how to ask for data, and how to make your own data discoverable. First off, finding data is hard. In fact, of all the NIH-funded journal articles that were published in 2011 located in PubMed Central, 88% of data sets were invisible. That's approximately over 200,000 data sets. However, finding data is even harder when you don't know what you're looking for. So when you're searching for data, you want to start with a question and move on from there. A research question for a data search is similar to a research question for a literature search in regard to pulling out the key concepts of your question to determine your search terms and using broader and more specific terms to increase and decrease the number of search results respectively. One of the main differences, though, is that for a data search, you want to start thinking about your unit or measurement and method of analysis when writing your question, and before you start thinking about what sources you will use. Some questions to think about when developing your research question and search concepts are: who or what are you exploring? Patients, events, or a specific time, drug effects, DNA, RNA, single nucleotide polymorphisms, proteins, or peptides? What is the phenomenon that you're trying to explore? Is it gene-environment interactions, disease progression, protein identification, classification, tissue mapping, sequence mapping? And what is the methodology you are targeting? Is it next-gen sequencing, paired-end sequencing, whole exome sequencing, multiplexing, mass spectrometry? And before you start looking for data, search the literature. Has someone already done this work? And when you find related or relevant studies, look at what population they studied and the methodology they used and the parameters of their approach. And most importantly, where they got their data. This will save you time, avoid duplicative efforts, and help you target specific data sources. Now that we've developed our research question, we're ready to explore the myriad of data sources. To help us determine where to start our search, we have to remember that data collection costs money, and what data is collected is usually determined by the individual or institution's views on whether it's worth the cost of collecting and sharing the data. And not just cost in terms of money, but also in terms of time. How difficult is it to collect that data? And sometimes that cost is too expensive for an institution to take on, which is particularly relevant for governments and nonprofits. Some of the institutions that collect and share data are government and intergovernmental organizations, such as the UN or World Bank, who collect data relevant to government or intergovernmental policy. Nonprofits collect data to carry out their mission or plan and evaluate services. Private companies collect data to enhance their services, but this data is not often made available. And academic researchers and research organizations collect data in their field of interest and research areas that are funded. Each group has a number of reasons for sharing and not sharing their data. Even governments that have a mandate to make their data available to the public must also weigh privacy and ethical concerns. When it comes to research data, it's useful to understand the data sharing landscape and who is required to share their data and when. There are data sharing requirements from both funders and publishers, including the NIH and clinicaltrials.gov, the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, or the ICMJE, Nature Springer, and PLOS. Some require a data availability statement, which is included in the article, with variations including having the data in the article itself, making the data available upon request for various reasons, from privacy to having a large data file. And some require depositing data in a specific repository. So to get a hold of this data, you can access it through an online resource or by asking a corresponding author or group. And sometimes you need to do a mix of both. We'll start with some of the online resources where you can find data, starting with our own eScholarship at UMass Chan, which is UMass Chan's institutional repository, which ingests small data sets collected by UMass Chan researchers, among other scholarly works such as preprints, posters, and articles. Retrieval.org is a registry of research data repositories. So it doesn't bring back data sets in its search, but it brings back a list of repositories where you can find data. So when you're searching Retrieval data, you want to use the broader terms or field of study for your research question to bring back the best results. The same goes for the similar site, fairsharing.org. NIH also has put together a nice list of repositories that they host and support, which contain a lot of health data and information. You can also find health data on government websites of all levels, from federal sites such as healthdata.gov to local sites such as the Massachusetts Data Hub and City of Worcester Data Platform, Informing Worcester. Nonprofit organizations also may have a data related to their cause on their website, such as the Alzheimer's Association, which links to the Global Alzheimer's Association Interactive Network, which they fund. Google also has a dataset search, but it does not index all datasets and has limited filters, so be prepared to sift through a lot of results. You can also find data through literature databases, such as PubMed Central, by using the associated data filter, which is in the filters column on the left-hand side. And this finds articles with data availability statements or with supplementary material, or includes data citations. Something to keep in mind here is that not all supplementary material is data. So you can also specify your search to search for articles that have a data availability statement. But again, just because the article has a statement of their data availability doesn't mean that statement saying that the data is available. It might just say that the data is not available or might require extra work to access. So what are some of the common challenges you will encounter with online data resources? So one of the first ones is poor site navigation. There will also be geographic limitations. So for example, this data was created in and for France. And this brings up a good point too, that if you are searching for data from other countries or want data from a specific country, I recommend translating any search terms that you're using to that country's native language. Some databases are also aggregates of known sources. This example here brings in data from nucleotide blast, gene, and DB-SNP, or DB-SNP. Sometimes you only find processed data and analyzed data and visualizations, but no raw data is available. And often this will be displayed in PDFs, which makes it very hard to extract. And some resources only allow you to use the data with their internal tools. And like other online resources, online data resources can also be questionable, and you should be wary of sources that don't seem like they've been updated in a while, or things that don't match up. In this case, the site seems to have disappeared since the slide was made. And some data that you come across will have bad or incomplete metadata, which makes understanding and reusing the data difficult. And if restricted data is being shared, you'll most likely need to submit a proposal, or the provider may limit how much time you have access to the data, or require a specific setting for accessing the data. For example, the Dallas Heart Study requires that interested researchers submit a proposal and ask, as part of the proposal, when to expect a publication from the data. You may also be asked to agree or sign a sharing or license agreement, or a data use agreement. Once you've found your data you're interested in, the next step is to retrieve or ask for the data. And this can come in 3 modes of delivery. One is through a repository, or through a committee, and the third one is through an author. And for some online resources and repositories, the retrieval might be as simple as clicking a download button and downloading additional files if needed. While other data catalogs and other online resources have features to make it easy to request the data from the author or committee and will state the restrictions and how to access the data. For established repositories, there's usually specific processes, requirements, and restrictions that may be in place, and they may require to work with your campus services and IT to ensure that there's enough security in place, and may require approval through an IRB or another office, and it may cost money. dbGaP is an example of an established repository which houses data from studies on the interaction of human genotypes and phenotypes. And if we take a look at this record on defining the triple negative breast cancer genome response to GSK 1120212, there is a data use agreement, data use certification agreement. And to download the data, you need to apply for access. They also provide a handy tip sheet for the application, which is really nice. If you are asking for data from a consortium, institution, or research group, they're usually governed by a committee or advisory board. And like requesting data from a repository, you'll usually be asked to fill out an application, could be asked to have a data use agreement, and you may be granted the opportunity to review the data before it is given to you in its entirety. And again, it may cost money. Did I mention that data collection is expensive? For example, to access data from the Whitehall 2, also known as the Stress and Health Study, there's a requirement to fill out an application form and submit it for review from the Data Sharing Committee, and to sign a data user agreement. If you need to request data from an author, there's no guarantee you will get access or that they will get back to you. You need to provide a compelling case for why you need that data, and it's often unclear about what the data looks like or what you will actually receive. Data will sometimes require further classification after you are classification and clarification after you do receive it. Some authors provide the data in a repository or as supplementary material to the article. Others provide it available as part of an a link to an external repository. And sometimes there's a mixture of the two. So how do you ask for data from an author? You can use other data access forms as a guide. For example, this data access form from the NYU data catalog. In general, you should make your research question clear and comprehensible. Articulate what you would like to do with the data, such as rerunning methodology, combining with new data, performing new analysis methods, and articulate your broader goal. Is it to apply for a grant or write a publication? But in the end, there are no guarantees. The author can always deny sharing their data. These strategies are all sort of a rough guidelines of what you can do. But when you create your own data, don't forget the lessons that you learned here. Put your data where people will look for it and describes it so that people can find it, and make sure your data is organized and understandable. And these tips don't just go for if you're wanting to share your data publicly, but also if you're just sharing it with another person or with your lab. And some further basic data sharing tips: plan for data management and sharing at the start of a project. Set aside time for data management and sharing tasks, such as writing a data collection plan or making sure that all the file names are consistent. And then also outline responsibilities and obligations between your team members and to third parties like funders and sponsors. What requirements are your funders and sponsors asking for, or publishers that you're thinking of publishing with, so that you can meet those requirements along the way, as opposed to scrambling and trying to meet them at the end of a grant or right before you publish. Creating README files will also help others understand your data and its structure. You also want to ensure variable names are understandable and consistent, to document those variable names, and include a study protocol when sharing your data. That brings us to the end of today's workshop. We have a couple of other upcoming training sessions to finish off the library seminar series for researchers for the 2022-2023 academic year, and they will both be on data visualization, one using Excel and another using R. So stay tuned for more information and registration for those. Past seminar recordings are available on the seminar series page linked on this slide. This workshop would not have been possible without the work of some awesome librarians, and my slides are based off the Finding Data workshop taught by Nicole Kontaxis at NYU, Finding and Evaluating Data session taught by Jordan Wrigley and Aditya Raghunath at University of Colorado Boulder, and a presentation on Thinking Critically About Sources by Alexandra Cooper, Elizabeth Hill, and Christy Thompson. And remember, we're here to help with any data searching you may be doing. Feel free to send me questions directly or submit a question through Ask a Librarian.